Okay, so we are doing the second parak, and I want to just repeat what I said in the chat because I think it's important, which is that we were going to do this one parakim because I think we will get greater clarity, but then I kind of like slapped myself in the face and was like, no, the Rambam wrote everything that he needed for us to get to do these mitzvahs, you know? So it's true that Shimon Parakim might give us greater clarity in terms of understanding stuff, but we should be able to figure out his system from here. And I think that we could sit and focus on Parak Aleph and try to figure it out, like work on the stuff we did yesterday. But I think if we see the, like sometimes seeing what we in modern terms call abnormal psychology helps you to see what normal psychology is. So second parak is the thicknesses of the soul, and that might help us to understand like the soul. Yeah, so that's what we're gonna do. Okay, and we're not gonna do the whole second parak, I don't think, because I just want to get enough to be able to understand the first parak. Okay, here we go. Those who are sick in their bodies taste the bitter as sweet and the sweet as bitter.
A weird way to, like, that's like not how you would define.
Right. If I said sicknesses of the body make you have fevers and throw up, you know, not. But I guess he is going to be talking about how it affects your desires and your experiences. You know, I don't think he's saying that this is like the definition of sickness of the body. This is people who are sick in the body. It messes up their senses.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't think he's saying this literally?
No, he's saying it literally. He's saying it literally. Yeah. There's a term for what he's going to describe. There's a medical term for it. I'll see if it comes to my mind. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I find myself again like jumping to like a metaphorical explanation.
Yeah. If that gives you more pleasure than a literal one, then you're sick. This is the one I was thinking of, the disorder. There are those who are sick, who desire or who crave, desire and crave foods that are not fit for eating. Like dirt and coal. So there was a girl named Carly in my fourth grade class. She wasn't in my class. She was in my grade when I was in fourth grade, and she would eat gravel. So that's the only person I always think of her when I read this. She was not a bird. Not that I know. Yeah.
Wait, did she like go outside and just like take some gravel, or did she like come with like gravel and like a Ziploc bag?
No, it would be fresh. You know, fresh from the ground. Yeah, no, it would be fresh, and it wasn't. I don't think it was huge quantities, because I feel like she'd be in the hospital. Right. But yeah, and I remember even thinking as a kid, like, that ain't right. You know, no judgment. Yeah. I don't think it was her fault. Nope. Yeah, I got. All right, this is gonna bother me. I was trying out the name of this thing.
So this is a real thing that people eat things that are not meant to be eaten?
Yeah.
I've never heard of this before.
It is called. It's not the one I was. Pika, like Pikachu. Pika. Let's see if it's Pika.
How's it spelled?
Pica. Yeah, let's see.
Wait, so you know how to read those things?
What you know? Well, you know my trick. I mean, there's an easy trick. You look up a word that you know how to pronounce to remind you of how the.
That's a really good trick.
Yeah, it's a good trick. Yeah. So like with this one, I looked up the word home, and then I was like, oh, but then also like I do start to remember stuff like if you have a vowel with the line over it, then you pronounce it the way that you say the letter. Like O with an O is pronounced O. E with a line is E.
I just have like an intuitive sense.
Wait, I don't understand how looking up a word that you know.
Because you know.
Word you don't.
Oh no, for pronunciation purposes. Because he's asking if I know how to read this has nothing to do with Rambam shiur. Pika is an eating disorder. Oh, so I didn't see how it's actually pronounced. Whatever. That involves eating items that are not typically thought of as food and that do not contain significant nutritional values, such as hair, dirt, and paint chips.
Paint chips.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Oh, that just that induced a.
So
Yeah.
Who's like lips with hunger?
No, I wasn't. It was like to get a normal taste back. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like experiencing taste like in your mind.
Yeah. I did. Yes.
Do you can you taste?
I don't know. I haven't like thought of it, but I think so.
This is what I was talking about before. It's the flavor thesaurus. the wheel of flavors that complement each other, and it's an inspiration book for cooking. This is what I've been using, but I'm bringing it here because I'm giving it to tomorrow.
Wait, is it exclusively for cooking?
Yeah. I mean, you
Why
can
else do you need a
for
wheel of
tasting
also?
also.
Yeah.
You use it for tasting.
Or to get more feminist
Real-
cookies?
What I wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, so yeah,
Now they'll be
culinary imagination. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That on the recording? That's okay.
All right. Can we stay on the associative train or? Okay. Anyway,
Speaking of trade.
the Sony Hamachalos Tovim, and they hate good foods. Gon hapas babasar, like bread and meat. Hakolapi rov hacholi, all according to the severity of the illness. So it's not like one or the other. It's, you could have like a little bit of a,
But they still eat regular food.
presumably.
like-
Otherwise, they wouldn't
otherwise they
last for a
die,
very long
right.
time. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Guess he didn't go keto.
Kaf b'nei Adam. Well, you got to wait till you read his thing on health, and then you'll judge him for what he advocates eating and not eating. Yeah. Blueberries are death. No, I don't know if he says that, but he said stuff like that. Yeah.
No
Yeah.
bananas.
Yeah.
Uh,
Kaf b'nei Adam shenafsho se'en cholos. So too people whose souls are sick. Misavim v'ohavin hadeos harat. That always threw me off. They crave and love bad deos. Not that they crave and love the actions that bad deos make you do, right? Like,
Yeah, you're
that
right.
would be to have the bad day itself.
right. But the weird thing is, like, if you ask the person, what do you desire? It's not that they desire, it's not that they desire stinginess. It's that they desire, like, it's not that they desire stinginess, it's that they desire to withhold the money,
Right.
right? Like, it's weird they says that they love the bad deos.
Well, I think that's actually an interesting distinction because I think that it's possible that some people like you not stinginess, you can't necessarily say that, but with other bad deos,
Yeah.
I think you could say that like a person intellectually knows like they don't actually want to be doing the bad deo.
Yeah.
And so and they know the only way that like they can do it because like on an instinctual level maybe like there's a need that you want to fulfill,
Mhm.
but from like an intellectual standpoint like you're like I don't really want that, and so like the only way to like facilitate your intellect to like allow you to do that is
Yeah.
to like
I hear.
is to engage in and then like preserve that state of that and then
Right.
be like, oh, well, this is just like a character trait I have.
Right.
Just
So like, let's say, for
that.
example, like an example would be I don't know, did you use this as an example with pleasure? Well, we can use the example. Let's say like indulgence in taivas, like just like instinctual taivas. So you do want to be in a state where you can indulge in that, but you love the dea that allows you to like abandon yourself to that state.
Right.
Because
a lot of times it's also not enjoyable. Like it gets to a point where you're like, you keep trying to satisfy and then like you're not satisfied.
Right.
So like the only way to keep going from that, the only way to like, because intellectually, like this is not bringing me satisfaction and I'm only doing this for satisfaction. So just walk away from it. Just stop doing it. Just do something else. So the only way that you can keep doing it is to be in that. Just have that there. Just be like, I gotta just keep doing it.
Right. Yeah. Another example from a different realm, I think, also is like, let's say like haughtiness is people don't enjoy the haughtiness. What they enjoy is all the good feelings about yourself when when you are the best or when you like win or when people look up to you, So, but the thing is that you can't get that unless you are haughty, so you crave, you want to be in that state of Gova Lev so that you can reap all the pleasures associated with it.
Oh, so,
No, go ahead.
Meaning you're saying having the desire is what allows for having this kind of pleasure.
Having the dea is what allows for having that sort of pleasure, and therefore you desire the dea as a way to get
As a way to remove the conflict.
Well, that's one possibility as a way to remove the conflict,
or make it more
might be
manageable. Like
It might be
allow
a
you-
positive thing also, not positive like beneficial, but like meaning like, for example, you can't enjoy the pleasure. I mean, when I say you can't, I mean it just doesn't happen. You don't enjoy the pleasure of people like praising you unless you are in that. Actually, I don't know. Maybe that's a bad example. Yeah, what were you gonna say, Isaac?
Yes, this reminds me of the discussion we had about late pay and shechar.
Okay.
Like I think that the person who is getting drunk so that he can like mock others.
Yeah.
He wants to like it seems like what he wants to do like your question, you know, it seems like he wants to do is to mock people. It's not that he
Right.
wants it's not that he wants to be elate.
Right.
It's that he wants
And it's not like he wants to be drunk.
yeah.
It's that being drunk, being in a state of drunkenness is what allows him to
So
go
to
all
do
in
the
on the action. Yeah.
So then what's the thing that he likes? He loves being drunk. Or-
So in terms of the object of his desire is going to be in that state so that he can reap the pleasure of the activity that comes from being in that state. Meaning he wants to be drunk so that he can mock people and get pleasure from mocking people.
So and being drunk, you're saying is a day.
Yeah, I mean, we're using that in Isaac's example here. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Aren't we?
yeah, I was saying that as a question.
Oh,
Okay, I wasn't clear about the answer that I was being given.
so that's the answer I'm trying to then. I mean, I'm not convinced the answer, but
Can you?
yeah, meaning, okay, let's take the late. So we said that he really gets pleasure from mocking people. Okay, but there's sorts of conflicts that prevent him from doing that just 24/7 at any situation. But if he is a drunkard, that being in the state of being drunk or being a drunkard will open up this whole realm of pleasure in an unrestrained way.
So it's not even like he like when you say when Rambam says you like a dea, it's not that you like that the dea that desires the bad thing even. It's
Right.
that
It
you
doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, you like this random dea because it allows for this.
Yeah, that's the theory.
Yeah, and I want to. I don't think it's that it removes conflict. I think it allows you to push through the conflict. Like, meaning if you weren't in this state, then like your intellect would like, or you'd be able to like. It's not that like you lose. Well, maybe when you're drunk, fine, but in other cases, it's not like you lose the ability to see that like this is actually not good. It's just that by staying in that state of mind, you're able to kind of just like push through that and allow yourself to just continue doing the activity, even though it's like going against intellectually speaking, like this, you should just stop.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, I have an example.
I just want to say, yeah, I feel like we should also keep in mind that there might be different possibilities along these lines here. Like that might be one thing.
What the Ronald's saying.
Yeah, well, I'm saying like your answer is good, but like there might be multiple reasons why a person would want to be at a particular day. And it might differ from day to day. It might differ from person.
Yeah.
So there was a person that I knew that like whenever there would be like a line for like some sort of for some sort of like something that everyone wanted, like let's say like free food or something. This person I know who would like push past like forcibly like, push past people and like not care about making promotion. So they could like get like the best like like the best of whatever the thing you have. Is that? Yeah, but not totally like not caring about like social like violations.
Yeah.
And like I feel like there's like a certain sort of desire to like not feel restrained by that social thing because like that's just how it is. Like everyone like people like to know that like that's like
right. And then also people have an easier time being like, oh yeah, he's just the guy that does that. Meaning like he's the guy that just
and then he like gets the pleasure of like getting the best thing.
Yeah.
And, like,
Right.
He has to be known as that guy and he has to be consistent in doing that. Otherwise it'd be like, what are you doing? Like you're crazy. Like why you
Right.
So like it'd be like wanting that like trait of like, being like totally like socially whatever.
Right. I do sense that it does have to do with removing conflict. It might not be conflict from the intellect. It might also be conflict from the opposing dea, or social conflict, or conflict from responsibility that comes with stuff. Like I'm trying to think of examples from the other side of the spectrum, not the side of indulgence. But let's say like the example that he felt, the stoicism with the lowercase s, the people who are unfeeling, like that, like people who are unfeeling. He says like a dead. What?
Like someone who doesn't care.
Yeah, like uncaring, apathetic.
Like too apathetic.
Too apathetic, yeah. Where like stuff doesn't bother you, but in a bad way. So like, why would a person love that dea? Well, if you felt stuff, you would feel bad stuff, and like, or if you felt stuff, that might engender responsibilities that you had to take care of. Or if you felt bad stuff, then it might make you sensitive to the bad stuff the bad feelings you produce in other people. There might be a whole host of reasons why you want it, but why you want that dea. But the point is that you want to be in that dea in order to access the types of pleasures or removals from pain that gives you. Whereas if you're not in that dea, if you're in the middle or you're somewhere else, then there's going to be conflict, or there's going to be things that are not allowing you to like dive in.
It's talking about like Rambam is talking about like people who are really.
He doesn't differentiate. I mean, it's no. He's not talking about a disorder necessarily. He's talking about because you can have an extreme disorder. See, this is actually an important point. You can have an extreme dea without being in this category. This category is a separate thing of loving bad deos. That's an important thing. Meaning, you can have two people who are both at the extreme, but one of them is there because of birth, training, predisposition, whatever, those 5 reasons he said before, or you could be there because you love it. If you're in the first category, then you cure it by, you shouldn't even use the word cure, then you can change it by doing what he said before, which is to practice the actions that correspond to the right deos, But if you're here, if you love the deos, that's when he has to tell the bad deos, that's when he's going to have to tell you how to
that
cure
same
it.
approach wouldn't work.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be in both, like, I don't know, say like, take like I don't know, this man who like doesn't empathize with someone else and then thrives by like killing people.
Right, but that's not both. Both would mean, and you'll see why this is ridiculous as soon as I say it, both would mean that you are both abnormally sociopathic and normally sociopathic. Like, I feel like if you're already abnormally sociopathic, then like that overshadows any notion of like normal sociopathy,
I see.
Like by definition, right? Yeah.
Wait, could you elaborate on that a little more?
He was saying, could you be both? Could you be like just in the bad dea and also sick with the bad dea? And I'm saying if you're sick with the bad dea, then that kind of like overrides yeah. Like for example, you can be extremely haughty. If you're extremely haughty, it's like asking, can you be extremely haughty in a normal way and be have a narcissistic personality disorder? Right. Answer is no. Right. If you have a narcissistic personality disorder, then that's your disorder. You can't be ordered and disordered at the same time. Yeah.
Right. So we're saying that it's what happens is that you have a person who not only has a bad day, but also like sees it as a deal. Like you'd have 2 people, like one person like has a bad day, but like wants to change, knows that he should be in the middle.
Yeah.
All the stuff
knows it's a bad day.
Yeah. Knows extremes are bad.
Yeah.
But then you have another guy who like, oh, well, no, this is actually what.
Okay. You know what? I realized we didn't read the halacha, so that's what he's going to say. So let's read it. Okay. We were at Hakolifi Roch Hacholi. That's how far we got, right? So they desire and love the bad deos. V'sonin haderech hatova, and they hate the good path, meaning they hate the middle. And they're lazy to walk on it. See, now again, with Sadigon, it means that they can't tolerate the immediate conflict of walking on it. It doesn't mean they lack motivation.
Right.
Right, because they're very motivated to keep furthering the bad.
Right. It's very heavy upon them, according to their illness. So this is really expressing what you were saying. Woe unto those who say that the bad is good and the good is bad. Samim choshech le'or ve'or lechoshech. They make darkness light and light darkness. Samim mar lematov umatov lemar. They make bitter sweet and sweet bitter. Regarding them, Mishlei says they abandon the ways of uprightness to walk in the paths of darkness. So it's a distortion in terms of their idea of the good.
Right.
As opposed to just having an extreme dea where you're drawn to that and you're drawn to those behaviors,
But you're aware of it.
but you're aware that it's bad. These people are actually, they think it's good.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't want to exclude awareness from this entirely, because you could be aware that it's good or bad to do one thing or the other, but there's a part of you that does view it as bad. Whereas the like, otherwise there'd be no way to cure it, because then you just wouldn't be able to see that you have a disease at all.
Oh.
I'm saying, like, you could be aware that, like, I shouldn't enjoy, like, people's adulation, or I shouldn't enjoy, like, not feeling anything.
Well, isn't that the same as a guy who just has a bad day but thinks it's bad and wants to change
The
it?
difference, I think, is that you can have just a bad habit. Actually, no, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you have a guy who, like, I could see a difference of, like, a guy who, like, really is, like, really attached to his data.
Yeah.
But I guess it seems like a quantitative thing.
Right. But what does it look like then, the guy who realizes he needs help?
He's like,
Maybe he was in a state of feeling like it's good, and then like there was a transition where now he's like, oh wait, it's actually
But then
bad.
he's not sick anymore. If you're defining the sickness by actually thinking that it's good,
Right.
right.
and the Rambam is about to prescribe a cure, so.
Oh, I see.
So let's look at the cure. Let's look at the cure. Umahi takanas chole hanafashos. What is the correction, the cure for those who are sick in souls? It's funny you use the word takana, not a refuah.
Yeah.
I mean, not being.
Not middos.
Nice. Despite every 10 instances of the word sickness. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yelcho etzal hachachamim. He should go by the chachamim, shehin rofei hanafashos, who are doctors of the soul. Yeah.
I mean, right away, like if the guy feels like what he's doing is good, why is he seeking help? Like,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's
why
why I don't
go
think we should go
to
that
chacham?
far. Right. Yeah. V'rapu cholim b'deos shemalam dimosam. They will heal his illness with the deos that they teach them. So that's also interesting. Ad sheyachzirum l'derech hatova, until they return them to the derech hatova, to the middle path. So here we go. V'hamakirim b'deos haros shalahem ve'inam holchem etzal chachamim l'rapiosam. It's the third category now. Those who recognize the bad deos that they have and do not go to chachamim to heal themselves. Alehem amar shlomo umusar evilim bazu. The crowning philosophy of Mishlei, the second half of the second half. Yeah, that they don't go, so those who recognize their bad deos and they don't go to the chachamim to heal them. Concerning them, Shlomo says that evilim despise discipline.
Right.
So you've got three people now. Okay, you've got three people who are not on the middle path. You've got the Perek Aleph people who have a bad dea. They're on an extreme.
Right.
Okay.
And they know it and they want to change it, but they're struggling with it.
I'm not even saying that. They have the bad dea.
Okay.
And wait, where is that?
That's in Perek Aleph.
Okay.
Second, and that's not good. He doesn't say bad, but it's not good, right? Let me hear out the categories.
Yeah.
Second one is people who are sick in their souls, which means they love the bad deos. Okay. And they crave them, and they hate the good path, and they're lazy to walk on it, and it's very heavy onto them. But they recognize it and they go to chachamim. And then the worst category is people who have sicknesses of the souls and they recognize it, but they don't go to chachamim. And those are the people who Shlomo says they despise mutter.
Right. But he's not saying there's a category for people that have that data and don't recognize it. Like he so far hasn't introduced a category where a person doesn't recognize that it's a bad day.
He hasn't made that its own category. I mean, that could be, it could be the people in the first category. That's not a defining feature. Let's put it that way. Another, like, you could have someone who is in an extreme, let's say someone who has never learned Hilchos Deios and thinks that, like, being, like, I don't know, being
extremely stingy
is a good quality, right? So like they don't recognize it's a bad day, but they could still be in Perek Aleph. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are sick in their souls.
Right, but so, I mean, that,
Sickness in the soul seems to be like they hate the good path and they're lazy to walk on it and it's heavy upon them and they love the good. It's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure now.
yeah, because I mean, that person presumably would never solve this problem, ever.
Right, but is that different than, I'm just very wary of the fact that like in the first paragraph, he just said people who are on one extreme and he didn't call those people sick.
Yeah, because there he was just talking about the phenomenon of extremes and
Right.
like, and now he's talking about like how do people relate to that.
Right, but within Perek Aleph, he did say like let's say you were born with one dea, or you taught yourself one dea, you know, and you could have an extreme dea.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you classify those guys? Are those different guys than the people in the beginning of Perek Sheni, or is it that it's the same people, but he just hasn't called them? He hasn't introduced the framework of pathology yet.
Yeah, I think Chulei Nefesh is like a layer on top of.
Yes, I think so also. Oh no, I don't think so also. But you're saying the second way, right? Meaning
Yeah.
that you're saying anyone who's in an extreme dea is by definition Chulei Nefesh, but he just hasn't talked about it that way yet. Okay.
No. There's like there's like whether you have an extreme dea or not,
Mhm.
and that's like one analysis, and then another analysis is how do you like think about your dea? Like, do you value this extreme over that extreme?
Yeah.
Like in terms of like in terms of your picture of the good and how this lines up with the good.
If you're thinking the first one,
The first one is
he's just not mentioning that.
Yeah, he's not talking about how in terms of
How you relate to.
how you see the good and how this relates to the good and all that. Like that's not how he.
Yeah, you know, it's almost like I'm going to use a phrase, even though this is not exactly. It's just I don't have any better phrases right now. First half is almost looking at the human being with their deos as like a biological specimen, whereas the second one is looking at it as a psychological entity. You know, like where your ideas of the good are. Or metaphysical, if you want to use that. Just, you know,
Right.
you've got extra metaphysical usages and you just want to, you know, spend it. But I mean, what I mean by biological is a biologist doesn't look at like what the code is that the organism pursues. It's just looking at what behavior does this animal do. Is this bird behaving weird or is it behaving like normal? You know, is this human like acting with an extreme dea or not? We're not looking into the human's head to see like how they view the good.
But it is interesting that the mitzvah is in Perek Rishon.
Yeah.
Which I guess makes sense. Like this is an extra, like the mitzvah only, in a sense, only relates to the biological.
Right.
Phenomenon,
Yeah.
the psychological, whatever.
Yeah.
But like the Perek Sheni is like, oh, now that you know that this mitzvah exists, that like you have to, you know, that whatever the biological, the system is functioning well if it's in this way, but not in this way.
Yeah.
Then we can talk about how do you feel.
Yeah. Oh, I gotta say one thing before you say something. I got I want to say an anonymous tip from an email, but that was just to make it sound cool. I got a tip from an email from someone who doesn't listen to the podcast, but said, if you want a hidden source in the Rambam about this topic of Hilchos Deios that you wouldn't necessarily notice, look in the Shorashim number 9 in the Sefer Mitzvos. So I just want to mention that so we can maybe do it, but before I forget, just so yeah.
Whatever.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess just to clarify the question and then I think answer it. I mean, not that you're not answer it. But I think there's like it sounds like you know, he's talking about 3 categories, but I think there are like I'd say it's more like a grid. There's like the psychobiological.
Soloveitchik? No.
Yeah.
Different kind of grid. Okay. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like the psychobiological framework.
Okay.
In Perek Aleph. And then there's like the abnormal framework in Perek Beis. And then for each of those, there's the person who is following the advice, and the person who's not following the advice.
I get the
but like he's highlighting the fact that if a person has an abnormality and is not like looking to cure it, that's like there's something like that's like
yeah.
Which you know, a person can have, let's say, something that he needs to like be better at and not work on it, and that's like a normal thing that people do. It's not like you need to.
I don't see the distinction there. What's the difference between those two things?
Can I just fill into a question maybe that might help us answer? So if we boil it down to an option, a question between one way we're looking at it another way, I don't know whose way it is anymore, is can you have an extreme dea without loving it?
Is this not acting on it?
Well, that's a good question also. That's a separate good question.
Right. Which, yeah, the Rambam was not.
Clearly you can, right? Because that's in the Rambam's prescription for how you change your deos. If you are stingy, he said you have to practice actions that correspond to extreme generosity until you establish that dea. And until you do, you're going to be a guy who is stingy, but is not acting on it. He's acting contrary to it. Yeah.
I guess he used the analogy of like regular bottle of function. Like I said, character was like a guy who's like let's say eating unhealthily.
Okay, I was as soon as you said regular body function, I was like, I hope he says this because that's the best analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's eating unhealthily unless he like doesn't have that much energy.
Yeah.
So as long as the nutritionist tells him, you could eat more fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
And less meat. And so you have either a guy who
This is
follows
the category where Malcolm says at the beginning all your aggression against the Rebbe. Yeah. Open up the wound again. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a good little file. I'm gonna do my taxes just to spite you.
Those are intentional.
You know me. Yeah.
So you have one guy who follows it, and like that's a normal response, and you have another guy who doesn't follow it, and that's also like a normal response. Not like a good thing,
Yeah.
Then you have like an extreme situation. Like let's say guy has like pardon graphic imagery coming. Let's say a person has like a person has like let's say a gaping wound and it's like hungry profusely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like abnormal, like really bad thing.
Yeah.
And one guy's like, the guy's like you need to like get this bandage.
Yeah.
So one guy's gonna like go and get a bandage, and like that's like the normal thing.
Yeah.
But then sometimes you have someone who has like a gaping wound and he's just like, I'm just gonna sit here and do nothing.
Right.
And
So-
like that's like,
Okay, so this brings up an interesting thing. So let's go with the healthy food analogy here, and then transition to the deos. So you can have a person who is eating unhealthy, and let's say he just never looked into the sugya of health, right? Or was raised like on the old school food pyramid, where like the more bread you eat, the healthier you're going to be, right? Well, that was yeah. When I was growing up, the food pyramids had the bread was on the bottom, and you had to eat like lots of bread, and then vegetables, and then like meat was like meat.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think it was wrong.
Yeah, I know he was wrong too. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. So you have a person who's eating unhealthy. Person eating unhealthy, and then is informed that they're eating unhealthy. And the question is, what do they do then? Right? Meaning maybe that's going to be the deciding factor, because there are the people who are eating unhealthy because they don't know any better, and then the people eating unhealthy because they are attached to that as a good. And it's going to be manifest when you tell them, are they going to like try to work on it or are they not? Yeah, right. That's a good example. Right.
So, which framework is what? Meaning the person who's not eating healthy just because he doesn't know any better, that's the first framework?
That's in Paragala. Yeah, that's the person who just is doing a bad day, has a bad day, and they just don't know any better.
And then our phase would be having a bad day and like that it's not healthy, but you love unhealthy food.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Right.
And then within that, there's three categories.
Within that, are you going to now try to do something about it, or are you not?
There's only two.
Yeah,
Well, can a person have
unless I'm missing something.
can a person have a bad day and not try to work on it, but not love it?
Yes, that would be in the first category, right? Sorry, in the first parak. In the first parak.
It's kind of like what you're saying that person that,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
Wait, where he knows it's bad and he doesn't work on it.
yeah.
And that's not a.
No, yeah. You're right. Maybe that's the third category.
Yeah, maybe.
Why is that? I don't understand why this is.
that's why I'm saying there's 4 categories.
Well,
Great. Yeah, right. Yeah.
wait, can we go through 4 categories? Because I didn't have 4
The
categories.
4 categories you're saying is, do you love it or not?
Yeah,
And then are you seeking help or not?
yeah,
Oh, that's 1, 2. I see.
Yeah. Punnett square, is that what you call them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you love it or not?
But it's what is loving it then? I thought loving it is that you can't. You're not going to leave even if someone tells you it's bad.
Well, it doesn't seem like that.
Yeah, it doesn't seem.
The
It
Rambam
seems
says that he loves
like
it,
there's hope, right?
and then he goes to Chacham.
Yeah, like the guy who loves it
No, he
and
loves
went
it.
to the Chachamim still loves it, but the Chachamim will help him.
and
yeah.
and he went to the Chacham. It doesn't say like Chacham will come to him and help him. Like
Right.
it says he went to the Chacham,
Right.
even though he loved it, which I don't really fully understand.
Yeah.
It's a little weird.
What
Yeah,
if the
he loved
Chachamim
it.
were like the ice cream truck and they just came to you?
That would be nice.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
They were, and they were called Nevi'im, and you didn't listen. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
I was gonna say they weren't my ancestors, because half of them they weren't, and then the other half was Shaphat Levi. So, yeah. If you go back further enough to actual Levi, then yeah.
Okay, the Levine were pretty bad also. Like,
getting aggression against the AHL.
What are you gonna say though?
So I think that it's not just the person is. I think it's the fact the person has like a distorted sense of like what he's like finding enjoyable. He's finding the bad data enjoyable. He's like, it's not just that he can't stop himself from eating like tons of candy or something. It's like he's finding that which is bitter sweet and that which is sweet bitter.
Yeah. Hold on a second. I just had an answer to a question that we're not working on right now. This might sound crazy. We had an original question why we call them Deos, and the Rambam yesterday said that this is what we call God's actions, and the only way to have knowledge of God is through His actions. Does that have anything to do with anything?
so you're saying Dea meaning
By framing, see, in the realm of in the non-Torah realm, ethics is its own thing. But in the Torah realm, ethics and metaphysics are linked in the sense that we know God through His actions, and that knowledge shapes our behavior. So by calling them, if you were to just call them middos, that would just be treating them as purely ethical phenomena. But if you call them Deos, meaning like ideas about God traits, so then you're treating them as simultaneously like knowledge of God that governs your actions. Meaning he's coining a term that is that functions for both capacity in both ways. And that lends itself, by coining it that same term, it lends itself to the fact that the more you know about God, the more that's going to inform your ethical behavior. Right. Whereas you wouldn't have that bridge if you that bridge wouldn't be apparent if you call them by different things. There would be learning about God, and then there'd be having good middos. Right. And that's how most people think of it, is like middos is a completely separate thing. But no, all of our good middos are synonymous with our knowledge about God. That's just a totally speculative thing, but it just hit me that why would you call it Dea? Yeah.
So it's like almost like if the word like characteristics was like derived from like a word meaning like knowledge of God.
Scientifics. Like we'd be like, yeah, right. Like it'd be like if you took a word that represented theoretical knowledge, but made a practical implementation version of that word. You know.
You have Mada and then Deos, and it's highlighting the like unity.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So how would you?
And did the Rambam coin the term Mada? Be interesting. And did he coin the term Deus? I gotta ask the word people.
Yeah.
Word people.
Oh, I meant to look at. I got something wrong when we first started doing Hilchos Deios. I said that there's two stickum that use the phrase Kel Deos to refer to Hashem. There's only one topic. I was thinking of Elokei HaRuach the whole basar. I think there's two for that, but there's Kel Deos, which I meant to look up in context. Listening to my own tofacha from my shiur last night. Look stuff up in context. Yeah. Yeah.
How would you translate Deus then?
How do I translate Deus now? Is I would still translate. So yeah, you mean to capture this idea?
Yeah.
Characteristics of God.
Ethical character. Character traits modeled after God's actions, which are the way we know Him.
After our knowledge.
After our that's a good question. Yeah. It's a good question. Yeah. All right. Anyway, what were we talking about before? I just had to say that.
Yeah. I'm not ready to move on.
Okay, sure.
So it's
I
like,
take full responsibility for throwing us off of our train of thought, but yeah.
like knowledge-based traits.
Yeah, knowledge of God based.
Yeah. I mean, the knowledge is knowledge of God, but just.
Yeah, but I think you have to get the word knowledge of God in there in order to get the idea. Knowledge of God based modes of action. Because really, they are modes of action, right? I think modes of action is a good description of what the Rambam is describing as Deo, because they are modes, but what we really care about is how they manifest in action.
The modes of desire, aren't they?
No,
But
I don't think they are.
well, didn't we just say that you can act non-singily even though you are stingy inside? Like you have a stingy dana, even
That's
you still
true.
act non-singily.
That is true.
It's like how bold you are in certain actions.
How what you are?
Like how bold.
Bold, yeah. Sorry, iyun. We should really think about how to translate this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I'm not sure how this would like how the word would be applicable to, let's say, bad Deus, or let's say holy and not Deus.
Right. That's also true. Right.
Like you wouldn't say a person who loves arrogance is like he's loving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
Like the ant from this morning.
Yeah. No, actually, it's not though, because you know the idea with God's God can be haughty.
Oh,
Because God actually is the supreme being. You know. Yeah. I think that's my understanding of the idea. If anyone else felt like supreme, that would be a distortion, but God doesn't feel obviously, but God is actually like supreme and He's the cause of all greatness. And that's why it's not, that's an example of what I think you mentioned to answer the question when I said earlier, like we don't emulate all of God's qualities. And I think you were saying that like, there are certain qualities that for God are appropriate, but if we emulated them, then it would be bad for us.
Right.
So like that would be an example of that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's a valid critique. Because really, what I'm describing is the middle path, not all Deos.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe my idea is just totally baseless.
I wouldn't say it's baseless. I would just say it doesn't have a foundation. But
I'm missing the.
Oh, there was just.
Oh.
There wasn't like a particular plan. It was just unfettered.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
unfettered aggression is a good example, by the way, is that of loving a bad dea, that you want your aggression to be unfettered, because if it's fettered, it's not as enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
If it's fettered aggression, no one says I want fettered aggression. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea. I just, I mean, maybe you could say it. That's why I'm saying, if it's just a mode of action based on a person's knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
then I'd say the better a person's level of knowledge is, the more they'll have good deos.
Mhm. Yeah, right. That's possible. I mean, my old model of why they were called Deos, which I didn't say yet, is that back before I was in danger of projecting IFS and everything, when I projected cognitive behavior therapy and everything, then that all behavior stems from your the way you think about stuff. So you call them Deos to realize that that's really where the behavior stems from. Is your conception of the good will result in your Deos,
which we're seeing here.
which we are seeing here. Yeah.
I have to go with another.
Yeah.
It's like a way to answer the question. The first framework.
Yeah, but the question about why they're called Deos. Okay, yeah.
But really it's really the what he's doing by calling them Deos is really calling the whole study, like the study of Deos, like whatever, like ethics based on knowledge.
Yeah.
That's what the study is called. And then the character traits are basically the units of the study of Deos. So they're called the Deos.
Right. So meaning even saying bad Deos, that's not a contradiction to the idea.
Right. That's just bad. The units of this, the parts of within the thing that you're studying that are the bad ones.
Yeah. Right. It's like bad models of divine behavior.
Right.
Right. But they're bad models of that. We're still categorizing them. We're not excluding them from the category.
Right.
Just because they're not actually how God behaves. We're saying that if you are being stingy, you're doing bad modeling of divine behaviors.
Right, which is weird. Most people are not trying to model.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. That the key of the entire terminology is the fact that we want to conceive of all human behavior as either falling short of emulating God or or successfully emulating God. And that's how he frames the whole mitzvah as lihidamos elav.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe salvage again. Thanks.
Yeah. So I guess when a person is, let's say has a good dea, all right, can we try to come up with a translation of?
Yes. Now I think we're in position to come up with a translation of dea. 1, 2, 3, go.
Of Dea or Deos?
Either. Yeah. Yes, the Havmina is that it should be called middos because that's the language everyone else uses. So why does Ram invent this term Deos?
Yeah, and it's been kind of unusual, he's been talking
about. I mean, let's put it this way. I mean, Ram could have easily used a familiar term, and then we would have not had a lot of the questions we had, just because it wouldn't feel foreign, he is coining a new terminology here. Ram is the Shakespeare of Torah.
I found a new work by Shakespeare, Georgia.
Find new, Oh, that was that reference. I thought you were referencing something else. I thought you were making a Cairo Geniza reference.
No.
Okay.
Oh, that works.
As far into the joke as I am.
The other interesting connection here. I'm just going to throw this onto the pile. Look at the last halacha on page 3. This is Zion 2. Lefi.
Wait, where are we going? In paragraph?
No, page 3.
Page 3.
Or Zion 2. Yeah.
Zion 2.
On the bottom of the page.
The bottom of the page.
Lefi Shemos.
No.
You know what? This I got it.
Since the names that God is called, the Creator is called by, are on the middle path that we are obligated to follow, Nikris derech lo derech Hashem. Then this derech is called derech Hashem. V'hisha limda Avram Avinu levanav shnemar ki yadativ l'man asher yitav es banav es bezo acharav. So they also make God know you. Dativ. I have known him in order that he command his children and his household after him. Because God's knowledge of you is a mashal for hashgacha, right? And he's saying explicitly here that if you follow these Deos, then God will know you. So does that have anything to do with anything?
I'm going to totally ignore that.
Okay.
Um,
And the Yadia and the Yadua and the Dea Atma. Yeah. Yeah.
um, so, I'm going to give an analogy for, we're talking about good Deos and bad Deos.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're trying to focus a microscope on something, so you can have it, be in focus.
Mhm.
That's like, and that's going to like accurately reflect like what the thing is. And you can have it be very out of focus, where even if like where it can be like whatever, it can be out of focus, but it's still it's like then it's like you'd say it's like very unfocused, but it's still like doing.
You're defining it in terms of focus,
Yeah,
right? Meaning focus is so Deos are like focus and bad Deos are like
yeah,
like out of that.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
it's like the more away from the proper Deos you are, the more out of focus your Dea is. Or
Yeah.
like the more like, but it's still a Dea.
Yeah. So can we try to define it or to translate it now? That Deos are I don't know if there's going to be a word, emulatable models of divine behavior. Emulatable, like you can emulate them, and you can have good ones, which means that they're good models of that a good Dea actually reflects the divine behavior that a human being should emulate. And there's bad models. Bad Deos are bad models of emulatable behavior. But the key thing in terms of the chop of Dea that I was trying to say that spawned the whole idea is that if you just said that we talk about middos, you would be completely separating it from the idea of emulating God.
Mhm.
Then you would just be talking about like measures of human qualities. But by defining them as emulatable behaviors of divine or emulatable models of divine behavior, then you're always connecting it back to emulating God and knowing God.
Could just be including intent as well as action.
So intent, it's funny, we haven't really seen intent show up that much, right? The closest thing we've seen to intent was today, and I wouldn't even emphasize intent, but like that's just like recognizing that you have sicknesses and you don't go to the doctor. But intending doesn't really seem to play such a role here.
It's just
It's dispositions that lend themselves to certain actions, I think. Yeah.
So, why is it called Deos? Is it like can you say that one more time?
It's called Deos because he calls it Deos because he wants us to think of our ethics as being entirely in reference to modeling ourselves after God's behavior. So it's knowledge of it's ideas about God that are actionable ideas about God. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
Actual ideas about God.
Not ideas about God, actionable. Yeah, that was a bad way to say it. But I like the actionable part. That's the part I'm trying to establish.
Yeah.
Actionable knowledge of divine action.
Actionable models.
Models of divine action.
Actionable models of divine. No, I feel like we can't use the word action twice.
Of divine behavior.
So why not just models of divine action?
Is that what I said the first time?
Yeah.
Yeah, emulatable models. Yeah. I feel like I want to have emulatable in there because of the mitzvah, the hidamos.
Yeah, because it's the traits insofar as they're causing action.
Yeah, right. Meaning because it's not because there's how God actually acts, which has nothing to do with how we act.
Mhm.
But it is a muscle or emulation. Sometimes it's just a muscle, and sometimes it's achieving the same results, but through our human behavior instead of through God's behavior.
So I'm not clear on why. I'm not clear. I'm not sure that I'm not really confident that it's true that like. I don't know if this is what you're saying or not. If it's not what you're saying, then
I don't know if I know what's on. We'll see.
yeah. Okay. I'm not sure it's true that that the person's actions are the person's like improvement in these areas is dependent on knowledge of God. Like you can have people who are very like, I'd say like very moral people who aren't have like nothing to do with Judaism,
Right.
but like they've worked on themselves and seem like this is not a good middos, this is not a good middos,
Right.
like, and like they've tried to improve their
Yeah, I'm not bothered by that though, because I'm saying that calling them Deos is the significant thing. Meaning the people who have Deos don't need to know this idea. You know, they should, and they'd be benefited because then they could keep the mitzvah. But like, I'm saying why the Rambam comes up with the terminology for this, you know?
yeah. Oh, yeah. So I guess okay. So I don't know if this is what you're saying, but or I don't know if this is building what you're saying. That it's calling them Theos because the paradigms are based on the paradigms of God's behavior that's like manifests, like in Clement or in the world. I mean, Tanakh, I mean,
Yeah.
um, and it requires knowledge, like more knowledge about God to know what is like the best data.
So I'm kind of waffling between two ideas. When I initially proposed the idea, I was saying it's because for us, the only way we can know God is through his actions, and and knowing God's actions affects our behavior. So trying to emphasize that two-way street, that the more a person who seeks knowledge of God will become ethically perfected, and a person who's trying to become ethically perfected in the way the Torah prescribes will need to have knowledge of God. Like Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Hodi'inina et derachacha ve'edacha," make known to me your ways, and I will know you. So yedias drachav, knowledge of God's ways, is the only way to know God, and then that will make you emulate him in these ways and being Racham just like he's called Racham and being Hanun just like he's called Hanun. So I think let's let this percolate, because now we have two things to percolate. We have the calling them Deos, and then we also have the questions we had about the extremes and stuff like that. But this, I think this is good. This is, I'm happy now with the decision that we went into the second parak, because I think this is like, bouncing the first off the second parak is good for our understanding.
Yeah. Can we summarize what we're saying about Deus right now? In your head? Is that
You mean about the original question or about the calling Deus?
calling Deus?
I mean, I think emulatable models of divine behavior, which are called that so that we link ethics to knowledge of God. That's basically one statement summary.
Okay.
That's what I got right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and let's stop here.